All right, so it's been 2,000 miles on the Indian Scout over the summer. This video is a bit of a summary of how I'm getting on with the bike so far. Strengths, weaknesses, first impressions, but really coming at it from an owner's perspective. So stick around, we're going to talk about everything I've learned about this bike so far. So I got the Indian Scout at the start of summer, and the intention was to get a bike that we could do two-up touring on. And I know for some people, two-up touring on a bike like this, you might think it's a bit small, but here in the UK, we don't have massive roads. You know, you don't do hundreds and hundreds of miles every day. So it's been kind of tours where we break it down into shorter trips, but we wanted something that you could get two people on, put your luggage on, and, you know, just go and have fun. And for that, it has been rather good. So I'll tell you about all the different types of trips we've been on. We've taken the bike down to Wales. That's 6 days down in Wales, clocked up about 1,000 miles down there. Beautiful roads. It's just such a stunning place to take a motorbike. Sweeping A roads, picture perfect countryside, lots of little chocolate box villages and things like that. We took the bike over the Black Mountains. If you ever go to Wales and you're riding around the Brecons, definitely go check out that road. Beautiful mountain pass over the Brecon Beacons. Lovely. We've taken the bike out around the Cotswolds a couple of times, which is always nice. Beautiful roads out there, lots of places to stop off and enjoy those little villages and coffee shops and things like that. So that's been fun. And we've done a few ride outs as well. One notable one was the Ace Caff reunion, which is a big ride that goes from the Ace Caff in London all the way down south to Brighton seafront. Thousands and thousands of bikers turn up for that every year. It's a right laugh. So again, definitely something that we've enjoyed doing this summer. So the Indian has seen a lot of different types of riding. It's been a combination of fast M roads. There's been lots of, you know, twisty A roads and B road back roads, you know, kind of little lanes and things like that. And of course, we live in London, we ride around cities and things, so it's seen a fair amount of heavy traffic and things like that as well. So over that time, over the 2,000 miles that we've been on the bike, it's definitely seen quite a kind of eclectic combination of different types of riding. Some it definitely shines at, and there's some weaknesses in there as well, which I'll talk about in this quick summary. So let's start with the big, fast motorways. These are the kind of roads that I just don't like riding on anyway. They're boring, they're straight, nothing much happens, but you do use them quite a lot just to kill miles off if you want to get somewhere interesting quickly. So we haven't done a massive amount of it, and the miles we have done haven't been particularly pleasant on this bike. The main reason for that is just the ergonomics. You know, your feet forwards, arms are up, back straight, you're kind of locked in this kind of bucket seat, and you get all the wind straight in your face. So it does mean that if you're hitting those higher speeds, it gets a little bit turbulent, a lot of pressure on your chest, on your shoulders, and it's a little bit fatiguing. Things you can do to try and help it: we've got the Dart Marlin fly screen up there, which definitely takes a little bit of pressure off you. There's big touring windscreens and things like that you can get for these bikes, but really, honestly, it's not what this bike's all about. And I will definitely say that if you're looking at this bike just for faster schleps up a motorway, there's probably better bikes out there. So where this bike really comes into its own is definitely off the motorways and onto some of the slightly more twisty, faster A roads and B roads here in the UK. That's where it really gets to stretch its legs and really shines in terms of the complete package. Starting out with the engine, the star of the show, 1300cc liquid-cooled V-twin. It is a surprisingly modern and refined engine for a bike like this. It feels almost like a European V-twin rather than what you might expect from the typical American cruiser market. It's quite smooth. The way that it makes its power is also slightly unusual for a cruiser, so it's quite revvy. 100 horsepower, so loads of power to play with. It sounds fantastic as well, especially with these Vance and Hines pipes. So if you want a bike that's got that modernity to it, but you still want to retain some of that cruiser character and soul, this is a really good combination. Now, you are trading off a little bit of that character, undoubtedly. You know, if you're talking about a comparison with, you know, a Harley and a pushrod V-twin, that's going to give you those vibes and the attitude that you might typically look for in a cruiser. This lacks some of that, but it makes up for it, I think, in spades when it comes to performance. And honestly, there's nothing quite like pinning this bike, and I mean properly pinning it out of a corner in just the right gear. The way that it catapults you up to speed is amazing. You just don't expect it in a package like this, but it will get you up to speed quickly. It's a quick bike. This engine is first class. I absolutely love it. So we know the engine's good, but of course, what's the rest of the bike like in terms of performance and handling out there on the streets? There's a few issues to talk about for sure. We'll start with the brakes, because they're a big talking point on this bike. It's got a single disc up front. I think it's a 298mm disc up front, a 2-pot caliper, not a massive amount of stopping power. So I've had to kind of unlearn how I typically ride, which is predominantly on the front brake normally. This bike, I'm much more on the back brake. The back brake's actually really good. Same size disc at the back as you've got on the front, single pot caliper, but it's got plenty of stopping power. The only thing I would warn you about is, despite the fact this bike has ABS, if you really stamp on that brake, it will get a little bit out of shape before that ABS kicks in, especially in the wet, and I've noticed that a couple of times. But once you learn it, once you get a feel for it, once you get used to the idea of using the back brake a lot more, it will stop. You know, it will. But it would have been nice to have had maybe twin discs up front, or maybe a slightly more powerful caliper, just so that you can, you know, kind of ride as you normally would ride, which is predominantly front brake with a little mix in the back. Could have done with a little bit more power there. Okay, so let's talk about suspension now. So the stock setup on the Indian Scout, I think, is actually pretty good if you're just doing solo riding. For me, riding on this bike by myself with the suspension I've got, which is the slightly later suspension, so it's got progressive springs, didn't have any real problems. Plenty of confidence in what you're doing on the road. The way that it handles lumps and bumps, yeah, it's a little bit harsh at times, but gets the job done and just feels quite compliant. You know, it wasn't a big deal. The only issues that I've had is when you start loading this bike up. So that's putting a passenger on the back, putting luggage on and things like that. The stock setup just couldn't hack it. Way too much bottoming out, pretty uncomfortable. Still performs okay, still holds the road okay, still gives you lots of grip, but just finds the limit in the spring very, very quickly. So what we've done, we've changed it out to the K-Tech Razor Light system. And I'd love to give you a full and thorough review in this video on that setup, but I can't because we just haven't used it that much. What I will say is, so far I've taken it for like 20 miles. Bottoming out has gone. We're now just trying to find that balance of comfort. So figuring out where the preload should be, figuring out what settings to get the damping on and all that kind of stuff. So I'll let you know once we've got that dialed and how we get on with it. £650, quite a big investment, but I think definitely worth it if you're doing a lot of two-up riding on this bike. So speaking more generally about the handling of the Indian Scout, I actually really enjoy riding this bike through kind of curvy, twisty roads. It's got a 29-degree rake, which means it's quite light and flickable into corners. The tyres are really nice as well, Pirelli Night Dragons on the dry roads when it's warm. Nothing's to write home about with these tyres in terms of complaints. They are pretty good. In the wet, I have had the back end out a couple of times, slightly unexpectedly. There's no traction control on this bike, so you've got to be a little bit careful. But for the type of bike it is, they perform really well. The bike's quite heavy, 250 kilograms, maybe a little bit more. But because it wears its weight quite low and because the seat height is ridiculously low, that weight just goes away. It's not a problem at all. I'm really enjoying the way that this bike makes you feel out on the streets. Beautiful engine, nice handling, gets the job done. Happy days. So in terms of comfort out on the road, the bike's actually really good for us. We tend to do no more than 80 miles in a particular run before getting off and, you know, either having something to eat or refueling or stretching our legs or whatever. So for those kind of medium distance runs, the bike is perfectly fine. I'm just under 6 foot. I've got 32-inch inseam, and the foot pegs are pretty much bang on for where I want them to be. You can, of course, get slightly different variations on the foot pegs and adjust where they are. Handlebars, you can adjust those to an extent as well. But where I've got the bike set up, I actually find it quite comfortable. Apart from when you're on those real fast roads where you're getting kind of smashed by the wind, but out there at around 40 to 60 miles an hour, no problems at all. Sam on the back, she tells me she's very comfortable as well, bar the issues we've had with suspension. We've got the split rider and pillion seat. We've got the backrest for Sam as well. So, you know, she's more than happy to do 80-mile runs before she wants to get off. So for that kind of riding, kind of mid-distance, everyday kind of touring, the bike's perfectly fine. Luggage options are pretty good for this bike as well, so you can get panniers. The reason I got the standard Scout and not the bobber is because it's got a subframe, so you can get kind of more luggage on the back and things like that. I've got the Indian spools that bolt onto the subframe. You can then put panniers on that. I've got the Indian system. There are other brands that do similar systems as well for the bike, so you've got loads of options when it comes to different ways of carrying your gear around. I've also got the rack on the back, and on that I put the Krieger system, which is, you know, waterproof and easy just to kind of stuff in extra clothes and all that kind of stuff. And again, we don't feel that the bike is adversely affected by having that much weight on the back of it, apart from, again, the suspension issues, which, fingers crossed, we've now solved with the K-Tech setup. But again, I'll let you know on that. So during the 2,000 miles of owning the Indian Scout, we've done a fair amount of riding in and around big cities as well. So that's a lot of riding in London, lots of traffic. You know, when we went down to Brighton, there was a ton of traffic we had to get through as well. And I've got to say, the bike's pretty good. Firstly, from a size perspective, I've always thought of the Scout as being quite a big bike, but actually it's not all that big. It's, I think, just over 30 inches at its widest point, which makes filtering really easy. The fact that you can get your feet down really easily means you can kind of, you know, paddle it through the traffic and things if you need to. And the Indian Scout is really easy to handle in those kind of environments. Narrow enough to get through most of those gaps. And the fueling and the manner of the bike in first and second gear is really easy to get on with. The clutch feels quite light. It's really easy to dial in the revs at super low RPM. It's smooth to get away in first and second gear, so you're not feeling like you're being kind of bucked around on the bike, unlike things like this. So it's easy to get on with when you're stuck in traffic and trying to make your way through things. The only thing I will say is it does get quite hot. But the good news is that heat is kind of confined to your lower body. So where you've got your feet out in front of you on those pegs, they're pushed right up against the header pipes. So you're going to get hot ankles and hot calves. You don't get that kind of plume of wafting heat that kind of comes up and cooks you underneath your jacket, which I've definitely experienced on other bikes. So most of you is quite well protected from the heat, apart from your feet and your calves, which I can totally deal with. It's fine. The bike's got a massive radiator, it's liquid cooled, so it doesn't get too hot in and around the city. I've seen the temperature get up to about 100 degrees, but not much more than that. Two massive fans that will kick in pretty early to try to kind of dissipate some of that heat. Small little thing to talk about, those fans are really irritating. The sound that they make sounds like two mosquitoes trapped inside your helmet. Really high-pitched kind of whine you get on them. So maybe in the next one, Indian, if you could put some better motors on those fans, that would be really cool. It's a very minor thing. But yeah, as I said, in and around city, what you really want, nice light clutch, good fueling, nice narrow profile. It does all those things really well. So talking about maintenance and servicing of the bike, things like that, obviously it falls into the highest category of tax here in the UK because of the size of the engine, so it's going to be just under 100 quid a year to tax the thing. The service intervals are actually pretty impressive on this machine, I guess because it's quite a low stressed engine, 20,000 miles for a valve check, which is incredible. Oil changes at around 10,000 miles, although I would definitely bring that in a little bit earlier. And I think most of the things on this machine, if you are even a little bit handy with a spanner, you can probably do yourself anyway. So I think the running costs are going to be pretty reasonable. I haven't done anything to the bike short of putting air in the tyre, fuel in the tank, checking the oil, you know, usual stuff. So I can't really talk too much about, you know, maintenance costs and things like that at this point. All I will say is that I haven't had any problems with the bike whatsoever. It's been fine, you know, nothing really to talk about. In terms of cleaning it and looking after it, there's a lot of chrome, but chrome is actually really easy to look after. I use Mother's chrome cleaner, really nice. I've also used Auto Bright's Direct Supersonic, which is a silicon dioxide water-based spray, which acts like a ceramic coating, you know, an easy to do at home ceramic coating, which means that a lot of the dirt and grime has just kind of fallen away. So it just needs a bit of a rinse and it's pretty much back to its beautiful self. It's actually a really easy bike to keep clean because it's quite solid, it's quite compact. There isn't really anywhere for the dirt to hide. So again, it doesn't take too long to get this bike looking beautiful once again. The overall build quality is really impressive. The paintwork is gorgeous. The chrome work is lovely. There's not too much of it because it's kind of split up with a lot of this black detail. I don't know if that's a Cerakoting or something like that, but looks lovely. Love the detail on the wheels, that kind of diamond cut effect, the way that they're machined looks really nice. The only things that I might change out down the line, possibly the fake chrome plastic indicators. Yeah, not the best quality things in the world. The mirrors, they're a little bit vibey, might change those, so that's just a little moan there. Other small little moans, the switch gear, it's not the best quality in the world. You do have to take, well, I, on my bike, have to stab the indicator a few times to get it to cancel. Not sure why, maybe the switch is a little bit gunked up or something, small thing. And the grips, the stock grips that you get are horrible, like really hard plastic, not particularly pleasant. I put grip puppies on mine, which has helped that a lot, but I might look for some better quality grips down the line. These are all really small things. Overall, the build quality of the bike is really impressive for the price point. So in summary of the Indian Scout over the last 2,000 miles, as you can probably tell by the way I'm talking about it, I've had a lot of fun with this bike. Yeah, it's not the most powerful machine in the world, it's not the most performance orientated bike that you've ever been on, but it is a load of fun. It's got character. It really adds something to your trip beyond just being the vehicle. Firstly, it is absolutely beautiful, so you get a lot of attention. A lot of people will come up to you and talk to you about the bike, which means you get to meet a lot of interesting people out and about on the road. It's definitely a real conversation starter. Secondly, it just makes you smile. You know, it puts a huge smile on your face and it makes you feel good about riding it. And it's a little bit unusual as well. You know, it's a bike that a lot of people haven't seen out and about on the roads all that often. So it gives you a sense of individuality, I guess, as well. So as a package, we've really enjoyed having the Indian Scout with us on those trips over the past few months. For us, so far, it's a definite recommendation. The only thing to really point out is that issue with the suspension if you're adding a lot of extra weight, but that's easy to fix, not a big deal. Anyway, that's it. First impressions really of the Indian Scout over the past 2,000 miles. There'll be more videos as we get to know this bike over the next few months and maybe years. Who knows how long it will stick around for. And until the next one, ride safe.